Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Decryption and I hope you are well. Nearly every single quest or mission in a game will always have a failure state. It's a key part to what actually makes it a quest. You could argue that you can't really have a quest without a failure and a succeed. If you don't have either, then is it really ever a quest? So in today's tutorial, we're going to take a look at failure states using narrative in Unreal Engine. We're going to look at a bunch of different ones, from global failures such as you dying or losing money or going out of bounds, all the way to specific ones per quest or per dialogue. So I'm in my demo racing scene here, and I've got a really basic thing set up so that if I stray out of bounds, at the moment I've just got a wall so you can't actually stray out of bounds, but I've moved it up for the sake of this demo and it's just slightly up there, so now I can get under, and if I jump in the water my character will die. So music will play, it'll fade on the screen saying you died, and then it'll fade to black, which glitches out for some reason, but then it'll eventually come back and reload the level, like so. And that's a really basic failure, but you'll notice that the quests didn't pop up and say they failed or anything like that, so essentially the quest was still ongoing. So let's take a look on how to fail globally. So failing globally is something that all quests will share. So for a prime example would be you died. If your game is typically a game where if you die you fail, this global state will work perfectly for you. So firstly, let's take a look at my death just really quickly. So on my main character, I've got my any damage event, and I just check if the current health is available, update the health, check if they're dead. And if they're dead, then I disable the input, I play the ambient noise you hear, I show the death HUD, I fade the camera out, wait for a little bit, and then I hide narrative and then open my level to reload it. So all we need to do is somewhere in here be able to tell narrative when the character has died, and it's really easy to do. We also require a master quest. So in here I have a master quest. All I have is show UI on mine as a variable. You don't even have to do anything with it, but just make sure you've got a master quest and that all your other quests, if you go to class settings, inherit from the master quest, like so. So in order in narrative to do global states, or global failure states in this case, if you just jump back to your master quest and go to class defaults, and you will see this inheritable states option here. So this inheritable states is an array of states that we can create. As you can see, quest state. And when we open it up, we've got all the default options. We can come and create a state here and call it from any point in any quest, just with a little bit of code, really easily. So on my master quest, I'm going to come in and I'm going to set the state type to failure, and I'm going to set the ID to something like player died state. And in the description, I'll just put, I'm just going to set it to you have died, just like that. And that's all I need. So I can now compile and save. So you can now technically call this ID from any point and jump to that state. But what I want it to do is when the player dies, then call it. So what I'm going to do on my master quest is I'm going to go to my functions and overwrite the get on quest started, and I'm going to instantly come and get my player pawn like so, and I'm going to cast it to my player first person character. So in here we need a way to bind and say when the player dies, jump to this state, and it's really easy to do. So once you've got your player set up and their death part set up so you can actually kill them off, all we need in this death at some point, which I'm going to do it here, is to say the player has now died. And this is going to be really useful for a lot of factors. So for example, when your NPC is chasing your enemy, if you're doing a zombie game or an enemy game or anything like that, when the NPC detects the player, you could bind onto the same event we're about to do and say if the player dies, ignore them, walk away. Because you've seen the buggy games where a player dies and the enemies still keep shooting them or attacking them. It's just because the player has not told the NPCs, I'm dead, leave me alone. So all I'm going to do down here is in my event dispatches, I'm just going to click the little plus icon and I'm going to add an on death, just like that. Now an event dispatcher is a type of variable where you can add a bunch of functions to it and connect to it. It's like a message. So you can connect to the on death and say, tell me when this is called. And then you can bind as many functions as your computer can handle to it. And then when that one method is called, all of the things that have bound to it will be told. So it sounds complex, but it's really, really easy. So in your first person character here, or in your player, I'm just going to drag on death. I'm going to hold the control key and call, just like that. And that's the first step of what we need to do. Now we have a way for this player to tell anything that needs it, I have died. But we tell it specifically what to tell. So on death there, when the player comes in, he dies, it'll just say to everything that's bound to it, I'm dead. So now we need something to actually bind to the on-death. So back on the master quest here, where we've got the BP first person character, or your player, I'm going to drag off and I'm simply going to type assign on death. And you'll see right there, it'll pop up assign on death. The reason I'm choosing assign instead of any of the other options is assign automatically creates an event like so. If you were to choose, for example, bind on death, then you just have to come and create the event yourself. So assign saves you a little bit of time. And now that we've got this, we've got a way of telling this master quest when the player has died. So now that I've done this, I'm going to right click and I'm going to do get state, and I'm going to make sure I tick the quest get state here. If you tick a different one, it won't look like this. And then from here, I can drag off the blue one and say enter state, like so. And this is how in narrative we can jump narrative's position, say from this one, all the way to this fictional failure one here. We can jump it from any point backwards, forwards to this specific one. And all we need to do is give it an ID, which in this case will be player died state, like so. And that's all you need to do. So now when any quest starts, it will cast to the player, bind to the players on death, and jump to the player died state when they die. The only other thing we need to do is just to clean up is when we quest failed or quest succeeded, you need to make sure you do it on both. We just need to cast to the player again, which I'm going to stick here, like so. And then we just need to call unbind event. Make sure you don't click unbind all events because you'll remove the event from other quests. We don't want it to do that. We only want the quest we're currently on to unbind itself. So click unbind event, and all I'm going to do is drag this red dot all the way back up here to this event here, like so. So now when the game starts, it will bind to the player's death. If they die, it'll jump to the failure state. If they pass the mission or they fail for another reason, it will still unbind that event from the player. And that should be all we have to do. So now if we start it, and if I go and die like I did before, you can see my quest has started. I'm walking around, I can do everything like normal. But if I jump into the water again and I die, the quest has failed. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is a global fail state. Now you can see narrative disappear, it'll come on and it'll reload the game. And because I haven't got saving set up yet, it will just restart the quest for me. There we go. So that's a global fail state. And you can use this for anything globally, such as straying too far or any fail states you know you might use in other quests that you want to recall from one place, you can call it here. Another use for the inheritable states is to do failure across a single quest. So for example, I have this quest here where I meet up and I want to follow this girl called Lily. But if I get too far away from her, then I want the game to fail. Now there are a couple of ways we can do this. I start this quest as part of a subquest here. So I have a quest here saying follow Lily. I could easily drag in here and put a go to location node in here, the narrative built-in one, and the go to location so I've got the built-in narrative go to location here. So if I come in and get a rough point to where this girl's going to be walking around, so I know she's going to be walking very roughly around here, so we'll take her location and I'm going to paste in here like so. If I delete the quest state and come back and put the fail quest in, I can now say you left Lily, and I can complete it. So I'll set the location to something a bit higher, like 2000, then I'll tick the hidden states because I don't want to see it. It's a hidden failure. Now if I start the quest and I go and talk to everybody, and you can see she'll start walking up to me. I'll start the quest, and you can see I can follow her around, and she'll walk over here, tell me about the girls, and then she's going to start walking away. But if I run the opposite way and lose her, you will see the quest has now failed. I haven't done any quest cleanup yet, that's something else I can work on, but the quest has failed because I have left her. The other option, instead of doing the location-based method here, is inside the subquest that actually starts the following here, you could actually come to the event graph, and on started, you could come in, get the location of Lily, or the person you're following, and then call fail, just like we did on here. You'll also notice, because we're using the on death event here, we actually get a new function we can override specifically if that event is called. That can also be quite useful. The next failure state type I'm going to show you is dialogue-driven failure state. You very well might have some dialogue that you want to fail. So on the Nakamura Sisters quest, they ask you to sabotage a car. So you can come around and you can sabotage a bunch of people's cars, and once you do it, you can run up and she'll ask you, whose car did you sabotage? If you just pick normal people's cars, they'll just thank you and say, yeah, if you need it, we're here. However, if you come and sabotage their car, they will actually blame you, and then they'll say, we're going to get you for this. and that's all normal. But if we take note of the ID of the last stage, or whichever stage you want it to, we can come back to the raceway, to the quest where we have it, and here, where we have to report back to the Nakamura sisters, all it's doing is waiting for it to say, we've done one of them. So you can see on my dialogue, they all come up to this one thing here, except the failure one. And I'm saying, when this one is called, then the quest succeeds. There. However, if you tick the bottom one, here, it's a hidden objective, because you shouldn't be touching it, and the ID is here, then it will come and fail the quest instead. Take a quick look. So we can run up to the Nakamura sisters here, and we can talk to them, and they'll basically say, we're going to show you up, you think you're so good, blah, 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 and they'll say, if you want to earn our respect, sabotage somebody's car, and you can agree to it, and then the quest will start. So we have to come up and sabotage someone's car. So I could sabotage Carlos's or somebody else's, but let's come and sabotage their car here. There we go, so popped her tyres, and we can come back and report now. Now you could just lie and say you've done someone else's, but if you come and say you've sabotaged their car, ignore the lie, I'm still working on it, then they'll get angry at you and say what's wrong with you, and you'll see the quest will fail, because that's a dialogue failed one. And all we're doing for that is using the play dialogue node and passing in the ID of what we want. You don't even have to make it hidden, it can be completely visible. The final fail state we're going to look at is one that we've previously done in the last tutorial where we set up quest timers. And this is on Carlos's car crisis here. So we have a time on Carlos's quest that starts for 40 seconds. But if I just set it down to 5 for speed's sake. But the way I've set it up is if the data task of timer finished is called and it's given the argument of Carlos's car parts timer, we know that the player has run out of time, and then we can fail it based on that. And the way this works, if you haven't watched the previous tutorial, is in my narrative default UI, I have my timer set up here that it creates the timer widget. And when the widget first starts, it calls itself over and over again. And if it gets to the timer remaining and finishes, it will come in and complete the task of DT timer finished. Now, you could use this either way. You could use it as a success state. So, for example, if you need to ignore Carlos's cars, instead of this being hidden, you can say, ignore Carlos until the race to sabotage him and succeed the quest, depending on how it goes. In my case, I'm calling failure state. So you can see if I come and start the quest with Carlos, he'll basically say, please help me get the car. And you can see as the time ticks down, it will fail because we ran out of time. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So that is a bunch of different ways to fail each individual quest that you might want. We've had everything from global death states to escaping NPCs while you're actually trying to follow them, to timer-based failures and dialogue-driven failures, like so. There are countless different types of ways you can fail in a game, and a single quest won't ever only have one failure state. You will have a handful. If you look at games such as Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, every mission has a arrested failure state, a death failure state, and then some quests will have different ones depending on what's happening, such as losing the NPC's failure state, killing the wrong person, or even driving too far away. And you can easily build these up with narratives, different methods to do it, from the inheritable states, which is a narrative 3.1 feature, to individually building the branches up like so. I hope this helps. If you've got any other examples of failure states, let's all join together down below and make sure everybody gets the correct failure states in their games. Thanks for watching. My name is Decryption. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time.